Another week have gone by, which means we got more interesting support for set 3, Advance of the Intertwined Stars, and I think the winner this time around might be a bit surprising, because Hexorb Sorceress, once again, got some very spicy reveals. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we do once again the weekly roundup as we already passed a new week. It's probably now Saturday once this video is out because it's Friday when I'm recording this, but that's besides the point. So we have a bunch of new cards to talk about for every single nation of the main 5 great nations. So with any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards. And we're going to start off with the reveals for Monday, which were new Dragon Empire support cards. And we start off with a very interesting double R, which is this great one, Blaze Maiden Himena. And Himena has the effect, although when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, cost, counterlist 1, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 1 card with Overdress ability from among them, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So this is a searcher or tutor for the Overdress cards. Now, I'm not so sure how good it's going to be for the generic Overdress deck, because Counterblast is a very heavy resource. Yes, we have Urger that allows us to refund it, but it's always going to be a bit of an iffy situation, and especially since seeing as this is top 7, so it's not the most consistent searcher. Now, that said, we're going to play a lot of Overdress cards, so you can almost assume that this thing will always hit the target, but then you can ask yourself, is it going to be the target you're looking for? So, depending on your playstyle and how the deck is going to shape out from set 3 and onwards, this card might or might not actually make its cut into the deck, but it's definitely a card that I would recommend to keep in the back of your head, because this can definitely come up at some point. Now, another Overdress support card, but this one is really questionable, is Blaze Fist Monk Gyoukou. And Gyoukou has the effect, although when this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, if your Vanguard is Chakravarti Divine Dragon Nirvana, cost soulless 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So this is effectively a cheaper Verena retire effect. So instead of 2 Soul Blasts, it's 1, but it's very conditional because I believe this doesn't work with the right line discard, because if you discard it when you're still at grade 2 riding into Nirvana, I think it immediately checks if you're Nirvana, but you're still at the grade 2 at this point. So I think it only can work if you discard it for Nirvana's own skill to resurrect a grade 0 aka Trickster to the field, which is very conditional. Might come up for a budget deck, but I don't think this is going to make a splash in the actual full power list. And another card that probably won't see a lot of play is this grade 2 for Nirvana once again, which is Flare Scourge Dragon. And its effect is auto rearguard circle. When your rearguard is placed, if it's overdressed, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it's a 9k body that becomes 14k if we overdress that turn, and can stack. But as seen as a grade 2, that means you have to overdress either multiple Valientes on top of each other or with the new Verena, but it all depends on how that's going to play out. Right now, I'm not really too hopeful about this particular card, as it also takes, once again, slots up for your Overdress cards, and it doesn't really increase the consistency or the output of your deck all too much. Now, if we move up to Tuesday, we've got Stoichea reveals, and these Stoichea reveals are actually kind of interesting, because first off, we got this grade 2 Blooming Petal Caryophyllus, and Caryophyllus has the effect, although when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, if your soul has no cards, soul charge 2. So it's a soul engine. Sadly, it's on a 9k body, so might be annoying to some extent, but it can definitely work for Stoichea, because all Stoichea decks, even the new Flagberg version, uses quite a lot of soul, so you can definitely use some soul engine, and this can be a great way to instantly replenish 2 cards. Now, it does have the restriction that you need to have no soul in order to call this thing, and it is a 9k body you need to have on the board, but depending on what type of deck you're playing and how you're piloting it, this could definitely be a nice addition for your deck, and probably will be filling a tech slot. But the thing is, this card might already be outclashed for at least Flagberg Dragon and potentially Magnolia, thanks to this great one, priced Trident, because this card has the effect auto rearguard circle. When your other unit attacks, if it's the 5th battle of this turn, cost, put this unit into your soul and counter charge 1. So this not only gives you a soul, but it also gives you a counter. Yes, you lose a body from the field, but in some instances, that is not really that big of an issue. And definitely in Magnolia as well as in Flagberg, you're going to use both resources, so having the ability to replenish them is pretty good. And the fact that it happens mid-battle can even be better, because it can potentially give you the resource you need for that specific attack. A good example is with Flagberg. He has an on-attack skill that costs a counterblast. So if you have no counterblast, but you are attacking with your Vanguard for the 5th battle, you can activate this card, put it in Soul, countercharge, and immediately use the counterblast to activate Flagberg Dragon's its own skill. Same thing can happen within Magnolia, which allows the deck to be a bit more flexible. So I can definitely see this card being run, as it is just a really good generic resource engine. Now the final card that we got for Stoichia is a brand new Blitz order, probably for Zorga, but I don't really think it's going to see a lot of play, if any at all, because we got this grade 2 Blitz order, Darkness Hiding. And its effect is play this with cost, counterblast 1, and put 4 order cards from your bind zone into the drop. Choose one of your units being attacked by a rear guard, and it gets power plus 20k until the end of the battle. There are too many restrictions for too little payout, because 20k shield isn't really that much. We already got 15k shield Blitz orders with no conditions and no cost. And yes, you can say the 4 orders back into drop zone can actually help Zorga for more Alchemagic plays if you're running out of orders, but 1, we got other cards that can do this better, and 2, the fact that you need to have specifically 4 order cards in your bind zone can also hurt this card, because if you have 3 or less, you cannot even activate this card in the first place, which can be really annoying because most Zorga lists don't even come that far. And then only for 20k power, losing a card in a counterblast, not really that great. So probably this order won't really see any actual play unless in a very specific build that can capitalize on the order cards being in a bind zone. Now moving up to Wednesday, we've got some new Brandgate cards, and these cards for the prison archetype is actually really interesting, because first off we got this new grade 1 double R, which is Aurora Battle Princess Tula Bunga-Vilias. And Bunga-Vilias has the effect, although when a unit is placed on the rearguard circle, choose one of your opponent's imprisoned unit cards in your prison, and you may call to an open rearguard circle. If you called, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and imprison it in your prison. So effectively you're putting one unit out of the prison and give it to your opponent, but then immediately get another card from the field in your prison. It doesn't cost you any resource, which is great because you're not really actively gaining value, but it actually can annoy your opponent quite a bit, and it can help you accelerate your engine as well, because we have a couple of cards in this set that activate the moment a card is freed out of the prison. So this card can activate those effects during your turn, so that at least gives you guaranteed value, which you probably can immediately use. But on top of that, you can also just screw your opponent, because let's say for example you have a very powerful grade 2 or grade 3 in their prison, which you know they're going to free because you're going to use it for their engine. You can effectively one-up them, and if they have nothing behind their Vanguard, you can free that grade 2 or grade 3, place it behind their Vanguard, it's not a booster, so it's a wasted card, and then get one of their other grade 1s or grade 2s that actually are doing still something on the board. That can annoy your opponent, which makes this card actually quite flexible in a lot of scenarios, and depending on your playstyle and what engine you're playing, can actually be pretty good. But on top of it, we can immediately see a new synergy with another card that got revealed, because we have this grade 1, Aurora Battle Princess Syra Zenith. And Zenith has the effect, although when the unit is placed on the rearguard circle, cost counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, imprison it in your prison, and soul charge 1 for each grade of that imprisoned card. So we already know that 1 counterblast is equal to 2 prisons, and 1 soul is equal to 1 prison. So being able to imprison 1 grade 1 and getting 1 soul back is effectively the same amount of value you can generate with any other card. So this skill is decent on a grade 1. But then if you hit a grade 2, you get 2 soul, which is actually effectively a +1 on potential prison targets. And if we hit a grade 3, that's +2 on soul in resource value, which is even better. And as soon as we just have the grade 1, which allows us to swap any card from the prison back onto the field, that means we can grab a grade 3, put it onto the board, and then immediately imprison once again with this grade 1 to get free soul. So if we need soul for a certain engine, which we already saw with the new cards, this is another interesting way to basically fuel that engine. So overall, really interesting. I don't know if it's actually going to see play, but interesting nonetheless. And then finally we got a brand new set order, but it's not a prison card, it's this grade 2 Refurbishment Dock. And its effect is play this with cost, counterblast 1. Although, when this card is put into the order zone, draw a card, which basically refund it, and then continues in order zone all of your grade 2 rearguards get boost. So effectively, you're paying a counterblast for a cycle and giving all your grade 2s for the rest of the game boost. Now, I'm not so sure how good this is currently with Prison or potentially Orifice for that matters, because most of Orifice cards are just grade 1s anyways, and I think it doesn't even work with Orifice, because if you have something else besides Worlds, the whole thing doesn't even work. But this could also maybe work with Space Gridora, but even then I don't really think it's gonna matter all that much. So it all comes down to what Brandgate is going to get in the future. Right now I don't really see a lot of value behind this, but it can definitely matter at some point if we get an archetype or a deck that relies heavily on grade 2s, and then you get more value by just giving them all boost. So I'm very curious how far that's gonna go and if this ever gonna come up, but right now it's a bit iffy. Now on Thursday we finally saw the rest of the support for Greedon, and it's interesting. It's kind of questionable, but I can see the value behind it and what they're trying to go for, but I think we might need a bit more, but who knows, maybe with more playtesting it actually will come out that Greedon is pretty solid and doesn't really need anymore. Because first off, we got a brand new grade 1 Desire Devil in the likes of Desire Devil Inken. And Inken has the effect, although when this unit is placed in the Rigid Circle, if you Persona Road this turn, Soul Charge 1. Its Soul Charge is great, but the Persona Red condition is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. But then we also got Auto. When this unit is put from the Rigid Circle into the Soul by your Vanguard's ability cost, Counterblast 2, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power plus 5k, drive plus 1 until the end of turn. Now, sadly, this comes into play after the initial attack, so we only get one extra drive check on the second attack. So you still minus as you get 3 drive checks, but you put 4 cards into the Soul, which isn't all that great, but at least you compensate a little bit. And yes, the 2 counterblast is way overcosted, but in Greedon's case, you don't really use a lot of counterblast, so you can definitely get away with actually running this card. And keep in mind, Greedon has 1 extra counterblast to work with because it can use 6 of the 7 damage, unlike any other deck that can only use 5 of the 6. So that's also another thing to keep in mind. But on top of that, we also got a new grade 2 in the likes of Desire Devil Mukka. And Mukka has the effect, although when a unit is placed in a Rigid Circle from hand, if your Vanguard is Avaricious Demonic Dragon Greedon, cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 2, choose a card from your Soul and call to the Rearguard Circle. So this is another way to compensate for the minus that Greedon does, because now we can call multiple cards to the field to basically still do our thing. This is nice to just put up more either bodies on the board or effectively get the attacker that you want to actually dish out multi-attacks, or at least 3 attacks every single turn, which is great. Yes, it costs 2 Soul and you call a card out from the Soul, and that conflicts a bit with his Soul 10 condition, but keep in mind that Soul 10 condition for the 15k power is not always really needed. You have other ways to actually give your Vanguard 10k power or extra power in general. So I think going for the 10 Soul and keep pigeonholed on that 10 Soul requirement might be a miscalculation of the actual idea of the deck. I think the 10 Soul is just a bonus. If it happens, but you probably want to focus on just restanding and just applying pressure in general, because we can make Greedon beefy enough with the other cards, because we have the grade 1 that we just talked about, we have the grade 2 that gives power if it's in the Soul, we have other cards in Dark States, plus Mukka also has another effect, which is Auto Rigid Circle. When your Vanguard attacks, if your Persona Road this turn, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So effectively, he also gives you another 5k power. And if you have another Mukka and Soul, you can call out another copy of Mukka with its own effect. And then the moment your Vanguard attacks, he gets plus 10k, and then you can suck in everything that you want to suck in, and then keep going from there. So as you can see, we can still empower Greedon finally enough without relying on its own plus 10k Soul requirement. But we also have another option on top of that, which is in the likes of a brand new grade 1, which is Desire Devil Yaba. And Yaba has the effect, act in Soul. If your Vanguard is Avaricious Demonic Dragon Greedon, cost, put this card into your drop, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So again, another way to empower our Vanguard even further. Now the great thing about this particular skill is that it works before the first attack, so both attacks get the power increase, which is a lot better than the power increase of Greedon, because that comes after the first attack. I much rather have both attacks have an increase of power than only the second attack being a lot stronger, because that means the first attack is easier to guard. Yes, the first attack can easily be perfect guarded, but if our opponent doesn't have the perfect guard, you want to make sure that it's going to be very hard to guard the attack in the first place. So Yaba is a great way to do that, and it is another engine piece to the whole Greedon playstyle. So overall, Greedon is almost fleshed out with all the cards, because now we see all the 7 deadly sins, and it just looks to be like Greedon is basically Power, 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 power. Flood the board, get some extra drive checks to mitigate the losses to some extent, but it's all about empowering Greedon as big as possible and swing with 2 beefy boys as consistently as possible. And honestly, it looks pretty decent right now. But another thing that looks pretty decent is Hexorb Sorceress, because on Friday we got some Orcader Sanctuary support, and these cards do look pretty spicy, because first off we got a brand new grade 1 double R in the likes of Revelation Magic Totoris. And Totoris has the effect, although when this unit is placed on the Rearguard circle, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, cost, counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Hexorb Sorceress, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. Yeah, this is probably the best card that Hexorb Sorceress could ever ask for, because it's effectively a Persona Right Searcher, which means you will have consistent access to your entire engine. If you get this thing on turn 3, you guarantee on turn 4 your engine is live. I think Hexorb Sorceress could not ask for any better card, and this is great. And at the same time, if you check your top X cards and you see absolutely nothing of no trigger worth or anything, this is a great way to just reshuffle the deck and get another chance of actually hitting triggers, which is honestly really great. Now, the only problem is, of course, if you do see triggers on top of your deck and you don't have an Hexorb Sorceress in hand, then you need to make the decision, do I value the triggers that are now on top of my deck more than I value having an Hexorb Sorceress in hand for next turn? These are then things you need to think about and weigh these options, which is great because it makes the Hexorb Sorceress deck also more skillful, and I'm all for that. But on top of that, we also got a surprising reveal in the form of a new grade 2 triple R, but this triple R is kind of questionable because it's a triple R, because as you can see here we have Aspiring Magic Cacarone, and Cacarone has the effect, although when it's used placed on the Rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is Hexorb Sorceress or Pentagleam Sorceress, cost Soul Blast 1, look at the 2 cards from the top of your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order. Well, so once again, deck manipulation, only the problem is that we cannot put any cards at the bottom of the deck, which means if there are no triggers there, we basically are still screwed if we rely on this skill. Now, on turn 2, this actually can matter, because if one card is a trigger and one is not, we can put either the trigger on top, so we drive check that card on turn 2, or we can put it on the bottom, so we are going to damage check that on turn 2, which gives the deck more options in the early game. In the late game, it's a bit different, because then it means we cannot really change a lot, unless we also rely on the grade 1 Diaglass Sorceress, because that allows us to call those 2 cards. So this is another card that can potentially increase the consistency of Diaglass Sorceress as well. So there are definitely options, and we have other cards that can draw cards, or we can use this skill. We see no triggers on top, and then we can use the grade 1 to search our Persona Right card itself. But then again, on turn 3, we already use Pentagleam Sorcerer skill that allows us to manipulate the top 3 cards of the deck, so you might not really need to rely on this card on that turn. And then also has the skill Continues on Rearguard Circle, Guardian Circle. If your Vanguard is Hexorb Sorceress, this unit gets power plus 2k and shield plus 5, active on your opponent's turn 2. Now, this isn't really a lot, like it's 12k, which doesn't really make a lot of interesting numbers, and 5k shield, make a 10k interceptor shield, is actually not that bad. It gives Hexorb Sorceress a bit more defensive power, which deck definitely needs, and the 12k can come up in certain instances, especially if you're up against something like the new Flagberg Dragon deck, because they multi-attack with 10ks, and they need to attack into a rearguard, and if your rearguards are 12k, they can do jack shit. So this can be a nice way to combat that, but I don't know if it comes up all too often. Overall, it's weird that this is going to be a triple R, because I don't really feel it's as impactful in general sense, but I might be overlooking something. There's definitely some value behind it, but I'm not so sure how big that value actually is. Now, for the final card that we got for Hexorb Sorceress, this is an interesting new Blitz order, as we got this grade 3 Blitz order, Light Illuminating the Truth, and it has the effect, choose a Hexorb Sorceress on your Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, and it gets power plus 10k until the end of the battle. Cost, counterblast 2, and it gets plus 40k instead of plus 10k. Now that's a lot of shield, and it's more shield than we saw on the Blitz order for Brandgate, which also costs 2 counterblast. I'm not so sure if this is going to be played, because 2 counterblast, it's still very heavy. 40k shield is a lot of shield, but is it worth it? I'm not too sure. The great thing about this Blitz order in particular is that at the very least it is 10k shield. So if we do not have the need for grade 2s or grade 1s or maybe a grade 3, and we just want more shield value, we can use this Blitz order. It's just 10k shield, and if we're getting rushed and we have a lot of damage, and we have no need for all those damage. We can even use it as a 40k shield if we really need the 40k shield to block a very powerful attack that comes with annoying guard restrict, like, for example, the new Flagberg. If he comes with the Super Battle Door effect, you can use this! You block the attack. It's going to be a 2 to pass, which is actually really decent, and you don't have to waste a lot of cards from hand. Yes, it costs you 2 counterblast, but either it was a perfect guard and 2 more cards, or just 2 counterblast in this card. Depends on the scenario, this might or might not come up. Now, those were all the actual reveals that we got for the card today reveals this week, but we also got 2 more extra magazine leaks or reveals, depending on how your stance is on that one. And one of them is a Cater Sanctuary grade 3, which is honestly just good for the nation in general, as we got Ease, Rod, Angel, and her effect is auto. When the unit's placed in the rearguard circle, cost Soulless 1, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a unit card, you may call to the rearguard circle in the same column as this unit. This effectively is a Soulless 1 plus 1 on the field, which for most decks is actually really good. This is good for Bastion because you're probably going to call another grade 3, and she is a grade 3 which synergizes with the whole engine, which is a plus engine for Bastion, which is actually really good. It's good for extra absorptions because this is another way to remove those non-triggers on top of your deck, and if it's just a grade 1, then you can easily just call it there, so there's also an option in that play. But it's also really good for Phantom Lester Dragon because it's another body on the board which you then can immediately sack off for your Phantom Lester Dragon skill. So it's pretty versatile in the entire nation, so I can definitely see this card being run in multiple decks or maybe in certain instances or certain tech slots. But in that same vein, we also got a new Dragon Empire card, which is also kind of flexible, as we got this grade 1 Drag Ritter Shihab. And Shihab has the effect, although when this unit is placed in the rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of the turn. Now keep in mind, this is a 6k body, so it becomes 11k once you call to the field. 11 is a fine number. It can work with the 12k of the Nirvana ride line because it comes with 23k column, which is decent. It can just be more aggressive for something like Eugene or Overlord, which is fine in general. But the thing about this card lies in its second effect, which is continues a rearguard circle. When you would ride from your right deck, instead of choose a card from your hand and discard it, you may put this unit into your soul to ride. So effectively, what this is that instead of discarding a card to the drop zone, you're discarding a card into your soul. And you could use that card a turn earlier as an aggressive card. So you can call to the field, swing with it as an 11k attacker or booster, which allows you to put pressure on your opponent, and then the following turn to not neck yourself from your hand for the right deck. That is actually generically good, and it works for any Dragon Empire deck because we got Urger that uses Soul, so you get actual value from the fact that it goes to Soul. Eugene in general uses Soul, so it's another great way to put more early aggression for Eugene that can then translate into more advantage later down the line. But this also, and probably works the best, in Overlord, because Overlord uses Soul with Nahalem, so you have good use for this particular card. But what's even better is that you will have 100% consistent access to this card. Because on turn 2, when you ride Nahalem on Bar, you can use Bar's effect to search out the one of Shihab, call to the field, have an 11k attacker or booster, and then the following turn, when you go into Overlord, you can shove it in the soul and not discard for the right deck, and then you just have another soul for a future Nahalem Soul Blast skill. That's actually really good. So I can definitely see this being a one-off tech option for Overlord if you don't want to search a perfect guard and just want to go for this. Like, I'm not seeing this as a bad option. This can definitely be a good tech option to just go for that play. So Shihab probably going to see play in Overlord and maybe see play in Overdress or Eugene, depending on how those decks are going to flash out. And those are all the reveals that we got this week. So a lot of interesting cards, a lot of potential powerful cards for specific ride lines or archetypes, or maybe even just generic playstyles. So I definitely cannot complain with the cards that we got this particular week. And in some instances, we even saw some cards that might not be good right now, but can definitely flesh out a future playstyle or tech slot once certain decks go into a different direction. So I'm very curious how these cards are going to pan out once we get the entire set list, because we're nearing the end of set 3 with all the reveals. As we're getting closer and closer to the full reveals, we got now all the new ride lines. We got a couple of triple Rs already revealed. We still need to see the new Verena, so I'm very curious on what that's gonna do. So We still have some more exciting stuff to be left revealed, but with that said, I'm very curious what you guys think of these reveals. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these reveals. Are there any specific cards that you got excited about? Are there any specific cards that you want to play in your deck? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!